When it comes to basing your miniatures, you can use things like a technical paint, and Ben did a cracking video on this recently. So when you get to the end of this video, I will leave a link in the end screen. Go back and have a look at that. It's really good. So today we're going to look at a way that you can sculpt and create some really cool, amazing bases in the way that you want to fit your theme, and how you can try and convey some movement and dynamism into your build. So let's take a look. Okay, so we have a question for you today. What themes do you use to base your minis? Drop your answer in the comments. Now you have a couple of options here. The first thing we're using is Humbrol Model Filler. Now, this is normally fantastic for filling gaps or minor repairs. Quite a smooth consistency. The second thing we're looking at is Milliput. Some people really like the fine white stuff. I really like the standard one, especially for this, as it can give you a slightly rougher texture. Also, really importantly, is having some water to hand. This helps to stop the putty sticking to you or the tools. Okay, I have a selection of sculpting tools here. We're not going to need all this, so let's get rid of those. Probably going to need a couple of these silicone sculpting tools, maybe a plastic one, and I might use a metal sculpting tool as well. If you don't have sculpting tools like this, you don't really need it. It's more to have a play with later on, and you'll see what I mean. Okay, so you want to get the Milliput. Now the Milliput comes in two separate blocks. It's really important you try and keep the air out of these and keep them wrapped up, otherwise it starts to go solid. Roughly equal amount of both sides, and for this you're not going to need very much. For this technique I'm going to show you, a little bit really does go a long way. So I'm going to damp my fingers a little bit, so therefore the putty does not stick to me. Let's get the plastic tool with a sharp cutting edge on it and dampen that as well, so therefore it does not stick to the blade. I'm just going to cut off a small amount from both pieces. That should pretty much do it. It's always better to have not enough and not waste any and come back and mix up some more than use too much and you have no use for it and it goes off and it's wasted. Okay, once again, just dampen the fingers. So all you do now is just fold the two pieces of putty together and just keep folding, keep folding, keep folding until it goes all the same colour. So all you do now is get a little bit on the tip of your finger and just smear it across the base. There's nothing particularly clever about this bit. All you're doing is getting a layer of putty onto the base. And just keep going until you've got the entire base covered. Now some people will build their base first and stick the model to it. Personally, I prefer to do this bit when the model is on the base and therefore build the scenery of the base around it. So my logic is that the mini is more planted into the terrain rather than it being plonked on top. And just work the putty around to merge with any of the details you have on the base already. You don't want it very thick, almost like a smear across the base rather than building a particular deep layer. So now you've got that base layer of putty down, it's now time to add some texture in there. So a couple of things to think about. The first is, what's the narrative? What's the story you're trying to convey? Is the mini moving forwards? Is it standing still? Sinking down into the mud, or is it leaping up out of it? If the model is moving in a particular direction, then try and make some of the texture go in the same direction. It helps with that illusion of the model moving over the ground. Obviously if it's static, then you don't have to worry about it. Now what you do now is simply get your thumb or your finger, make sure it's a little bit dry, so therefore the putty wants to try and stick to it a bit more. If it's wet, it will smooth it out and make it go slick. If it's dry, it will rough it up. So all you do is rub your finger or your thumb over the putty in the direction you want to go, and it will start to rub away a little bit, which gives you an awesome effect. It won't look like much at this stage, but all you're trying to do is have a little bit of texture and try and show that direction of movement, or if the model is sinking down. So if the model is standing or in the deep sand or in deep mud, then build the putty up around the base of the boots or the tracks or the wheels or whatever else is in contact with the ground, and start to tell that story a little bit. So as well as using your finger, you can also use some of the sculpting tools to add a bit of texture in as well. You want to make the marks or the texture as random as you can. Okay, so now I want to try and add some movement into this. In this particular mini, I want the Storm Boy to look like he's moving fast and there's spray and mud and dirt and dust flying everywhere. Therefore, I'm going to build up the putty at the back to make it look like dirt is being kicked up, and also I'm going to put some on the bottom of his boots as well. To make it look like some of that clag's kind of stuck to his boot, but also I'm going to try to see if I can make it look like some of that dirt and dust is coming flying off his boots as well. So what I'm going to try and do now is do a similar sort of technique, but with a smoother putty. So this is the Humbrol model filler. As you can see there, it's a lot smoother and it'll give a much finer result. So exactly the same technique, but with a smoother putty. So to put the base colour on, today I'm using the Vallejo model colour range, and this is German black brown, a really nice rich dark brown. So before I put too many more colours on here, I want to paint the other details on the base itself. Now as you can see here, we have a Space Marine helmet, and for no other reason apart from Ben, also from Flying Raven Studios, plays as Space Wolves. I'm going to try and paint it as Space Wolf Grey. For no other reason, it's funny. And I want to put some hazard stripes on this bit of piping here. I don't want it too bright because I don't want it to detract the eye away from the main model. But I want to add a little bit more interest and detail into the base. So I'm going to use the wood colour from the Vallejo Model Air range. So now onto the midtones for the base. And for this I'm going to use the Tamiya colour acrylic desert yellow. And this is almost dry brushed over the dark brown. And keep it in layers on until you get enough of a colour that you're happy with. Now to pick up the highlights, rather than paint it, I'm going to use this stuff, which is the Tamiya Weathering Master Set A. In this you have a sand, a light sand and a darker mud colour. Now if I open this up, it comes in these blocks here. It's got a little applicator here with a sponge on one end and a small brush on the other. The brush will give you a very light dusting effect, whereas the sponge will give you a heavier effect. Using the mud brown first, just kind of going over that and add a colour variation across the base. Then using the sand colour and doing the same, once again building up those colours. Also don't forget to do over some of the model itself, to tie the model into the base. So if he's been walking and jumping around on a dusty sandy floor, his boots are going to be muddy and dusty as well. So add a bit of dust, a bit of weathering around there as well. Also a bit of sand over the Space Wolf helmet to give it that look of drifting sands. Now what is quite cool with this stuff is if you do a bit too heavy, you can always dip the brush in the water and then you can sponge it off. You can do this two ways. One is that you can get rid of it and start again. Or the second is you can almost water it down and it kind of collates as dust would after a rainstorm, for example. I've done this technique tons of times now, but you're always thinking and learning when you do something. What I learned from this one is that yes, you can build up the putty as well, but be careful with your tools that you're using and the marks you're leaving in it. So for example, at times on this one, the putty looked a bit too worked. Me personally, I feel that the ones where the putty is rubbed on, the quickest, the fastest one, often gives you the best results. So there you go. I hope you liked it. Drop your thoughts and what you do use for your bases down in the comments. Love to hear it. And we will see you next time as we explore the world of miniature modelling. Take care. Bye.